Ladies and gents, about 6 months ago, so yeah, January time, I purchased the latest MacBook Pro, the 15-inch Space Grey with the touch bar, and I never really did a full review on it. And recently a lot of people have been asking me what I use to edit my videos, as an example, what's my daily computer / laptop. So I thought I would finally give my overall, after 6 months use, my review of the latest version of the MacBook Pro. So let's get straight to it. So yeah, welcome back to a brand new video. Now, I have the latest, at this moment in time, MacBook Pro. There is a new one coming out fairly soon, but if you're desperate for a computer or laptop right now, and you're interested in getting the MacBook Pro, I think this video might be helpful for you. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the specs, and then I'm going to talk about, in actual real-time use, how I found working with this machine. Now, just to give you a little bit of perspective on me personally, so you know what sort of angle, what opinion you're getting. I'm not an Apple sheep. I don't use an Apple iPhone as an example. I use an Android phone, so I'm not as tied into this ecosystem as some people might be. I was also looking at the Dell XPS 15. I was looking at one of the Razer laptops as well, and I'll get onto the reason why I chose the MacBook Pro. But right now, let's jump into the specs. So like I said, this was the latest available MacBook Pro that I bought in Space Grey, 15.4-inch display. This, of course, is LED backlit with IPS technology, with a screen resolution of 2880 by 1800 and a PPI density of 220. So this screen goes up to about 500 nits, and on the whole is pretty bright. Yes, when you're outside it still struggles a little bit. It's not quite as bright as the new LG G7, for example, which goes up to 1000 nits, which is a smartphone. But in terms of laptops, it is probably up there roughly with the best at this moment in time. Would I personally like it a little bit brighter? Of course, in an ideal world, but on the whole, it does a pretty good job. Now, the actual version I got was one of the highest possible specs, so I upgraded the SSD to 1TB, and I also upgraded the processor, which you can get either 2.8 GHz or 2.9 GHz, quad-core Intel Core i7, and I configured this up to 3.1 GHz. 16 GB of RAM, Radeon Pro 560, with 4 GB of GDDR5 memory, and automatic graphics switching, Intel HD Graphics 630. So they're the main specs. So there's a couple more specs coming, including the fact that the FaceTime has a 720p camera. That's my first issue. It's 2018. You are Apple, and you've released a product. Your highest end laptop has a 720p camera. It's not even full HD. That's mental. And yes, you're probably right. Not many people use that front-facing camera on a laptop like they would with a smartphone, for example. But still, it's not even full HD. 720p. Come on, Apple. Come on. Right, before I jump on to the next point, I'm going to give you again some perspective on the reason why I bought this, so that you'll understand my issues with the coming stuff. So, I was looking for a new laptop for mainly video editing. I obviously do a lot of YouTube videos. I didn't want a standalone desktop computer. I wanted something that I could cart around and still have the portability but the performance of a device. And the main reason why I did choose the MacBook Pro is because I'm used to using Final Cut Pro. I don't have to learn a new software, which of course is Adobe Premiere Pro is the main other one. A lot of people, actually probably more people, use Adobe Premiere Pro than Final Cut Pro. And yes, you can use that program on Windows computers and also Apple computers, whereas Final Cut Pro you can only use on Apple. So it seems like the better choice to learn Adobe Premiere Pro, but I'm happy with Final Cut Pro at this moment in time. As you well know, change is scary. So now you know the main reason why I chose the MacBook. We're now going to jump onto one of my biggest issues with the MacBook Pro, and that is battery life. It's apparently meant to give you 10 hours of wireless web, 30 days of standby time, but unfortunately, when you are in heavy use or video editing, which takes up a lot of juice on the system, we're talking a couple of hours, if that, and it's gone. That's really, in my opinion, that is pretty poor. Also, when you are editing, another thing to note, the heat dissipation is okay. It's not, there are a lot worse machines for this. Surfing the web is completely fine. Doing most things is completely fine. But when you are, again, video editing or doing anything really intensive, it gets pretty warm. And I have to have a stand on top of my legs, otherwise it's a leg burner. I've got fried thigh hairs. It's too much information. You probably didn't want to hear about my thigh hairs. I don't know why I'm talking about body hairs at all, to be honest. That's not why you came for the video, I'm sure. One of the good things about the MacBook is the fan. I very rarely I very rarely hear it go into overdrive, and it generally does keep the sound to a minimum. Another positive about the MacBook Pro is, of course, the fact that when I am video editing, because it is such a high-spec machine for MacBooks, I'm having no problems whatsoever. It renders things in real time very well. It's lightning quick, doing pretty much anything in terms of editing, transitions, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So as a video editing machine, it's absolutely flawless, pretty much. The only time I feel it lag a little bit is when I am scrolling right the way through a timeline, and that's pretty obvious, you know, when you're shooting with 4K, for example. You can also go between the two modes. You can go between performance and quality, and this, of course, is when it basically blurs the image, the footage, when you're on performance mode, so that you can not blur it completely, but just take a little bit of the quality off. So again, when you are jumping between the sections, it is a lot snappier, and then when you finish the edit, you can go back and put it on quality, and you can see all the footage in its best quality that you're going to see in the final product. Now we're going to talk a little bit about design. Now this is by far, in my opinion, still the best looking laptop-ish thing on on the market. Other people would disagree. You may do. Let me know in the comment section below a better looking device. You know, its premium feel and look is second to none. But that's on the outside. And there have been changes over the last couple of years on the MacBook Pros, which I am not a fan of. And here's one, the touch bar. Now, I'm pretty sure that they will eventually be able to utilize certain things within that touch bar that makes it a usable, important feature and not a gimmick, which I still feel it is. I don't personally use it, and I don't know many people that do. If you do, let me know in the comment section below what you actually use it for. I still feel there are certain things like the brightness, the volume, which I would prefer just to have a key, because you have to press the touch bar once and then do what you need to do with that. So you have to almost add a step in order to get that sorted. Also, annoyingly, I find myself doing this quite a lot. The Siri button, for example, which I don't like. Every now and again, when I try and press backspace, I will hit the Siri button, and then that goes off, and when you're video editing, it takes away the sound, and you have to click exit on Siri. I don't want to speak to you, Siri. I'm not a fan. It's just a nagging problem that is irritating. Okay, so the next point is probably my biggest pet peeve of the MacBook Pro, especially for video editing, and I still think it's a design flaw in my opinion, is the trackpad. As trackpads go, it's great. It works, still probably one of the best on the market. I don't think there will be many that compete with how good an Apple trackpad is, but the sheer size of it makes it really uncomfortable to video edit unless you have massive hands. I've got fairly small hands. They're not tiny, they're sort of medium to small. If you've got massive hands, then you'll be fine. But I personally feel for the average sized hand, the trackpad is too big, so that when you have to stretch over the top of the trackpad to get to the spacebar when you're video editing, after a while of video editing, after an hour or two, a couple of hours, I actually do start to get a slight bit of wrist ache, and that's because I have to constantly stretch over this gigantosaur of a gigantic trackpad. I personally don't need it, and it actually makes it more uncomfortable to use this device. One quick good thing, audio is very, very good on this computer. Compared to a lot of other laptops on the market, the audio is actually pretty impressive. I do like that feature. The two speakers either side of the keyboard work really well. The next one that's hotly talked about at this moment in time is the keyboard. There are potentially problems down the line with people who get dust underneath the individual keys, and it completely stops them from working. I believe there's a lot of lawsuits going on as well at this moment in time. I don't know for sure, so don't quote me on that, but Apple are in a lot of hot water over this new technology on the keyboard, which has been there for 2 years. Because there's no traction on the actual keys, it's almost like you're just hitting, you know, a table for an hour or two. I don't do a lot of typing personally, so I don't have too much of a problem with that, but if you do, it definitely is something to consider. There isn't much traction, and it's not that comfortable really to type on, which is a bit of a problem for a laptop. And again, if you do have this dust issue, then that could potentially completely disable your computer, because you'll have keys that won't work. So the final one is, of course, the ports that are available. Yes, we have a headphone jack. I'm actually surprised they kept it and didn't tell you just to deal with it like they did with the rest of the ports. So we have 4 USB Type-C ports on the MacBook Pro 15-inch. And while I have learned to get used to it, and I have specific adapters and stuff like that, I feel that I shouldn't have to. And yes, a lot of people will say, well, people should be moving forwards with technology all the time, and I get that, but unfortunately there are still a lot of other technologies which don't use USB Type-C, and therefore again, for the average consumer, this could be a problem. So that is pretty much it. So in conclusion, in my personal opinion, if you're in the Apple ecosystem or you love using Final Cut Pro, which is kind of the camp that I was in, or you're a sucker for design and the appearance of a product, of course, this is still one of the most beautiful products on the market, then yes, I would 100% recommend getting this latest MacBook Pro. And don't get me wrong, the actual performance is also very, very good, very snappy, but in terms of price, it is, in my opinion, if you're just using it for web surfing, if you're just using it for a everyday laptop, it is, in my opinion, too expensive. Unless you've got the cash to flash, then I would recommend going with something a little bit cheaper. If you're not wrapped up in the ecosystem, you don't like Final Cut Pro, you don't really care about the aesthetics of the MacBook Pro, then I would recommend personally going with a different product, because there are some amazing laptops on the market that are, of course, a lot cheaper than the money you would spend on a MacBook Pro. Finally, this is where you guys come in. Now, many people have actually labeled this MacBook Pro, this individual version, as the worst ever MacBook Pro in history. Now, while I think that's a little bit aggressive, I want to know whether you are in that camp or whether you do actually like this individual series, this latest edition. Are you excited for the new one? Are you going to buy it anyway? Are you going to wait to the new one, which is out fairly soon? Or are you going to go with a Windows laptop, for example? Let me know in the comment section below which one, if you are. Like and share if you did enjoy this video and found it helpful. Subscribe and hit that little notification bell if you are new to the channel and want to be notified every time I post a video on anything tech. Pretty much daily content on this channel. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. It says ASBYT. Peace out.